Why is it important to teach children about money starting at a young age? Some of these have already been mentioned: happiness, less stress, develop good money habits, etc. One important element is the ability to save and grow money over one's life, to set aside funds for an emergency or for something you want to buy, and yes, for the far future to be able to live comfortably in those older years. In order to do that, children can take advantage of time. The younger they begin to save, the longer they will have to grow their money. In too many cases, people forget the importance of time, saying, "We can do it tomorrow. There's still time." But once time is lost, it is irreplaceable. Here is a chart that illustrates the importance of encouraging children to begin saving sooner rather than later. Time is a great factor in the future value of savings. This chart is not meant to predict actual results, but illustrate the impact of beginning to save at a young age versus waiting. Remember, it is never too late to start saving for your future. By starting young, people are able to maximize the benefit of time to meet their financial goals and not have to struggle as hard if they wait. The longer a person waits before beginning to save, the more they will have to save later each month in order to meet their goals and needs. For example, we show Ava and David, who are 5 years old. Ava, with the help of her parents, starts saving just $10 a month. She commits to not spending any of this money and holds it for her future. David chooses to wait until he is working and then begins to save at the age of 25. You can see the results in the final amount for each of them, and as you see, Ava has almost 4 times as much as David, even though they saved the same amount each month. The only difference is that David chose to wait. Remember, this is only $10 a month. Imagine how much they would be able to save by the time they retire if they were able to save $20, $50, or $100 per month, as they might be able to when they begin to work. As you can see by the upward slope of the red line, Americans have a growing amount of personal debt. And basically, this is what has driven our economy over the past 20 years. Too many have used personal credit cards and not their own money to buy things. At the same time, Americans have dramatically decreased the rate of savings from a high of about 10.5% in the mid-70s to a negative rate in 2008. Given the growing amount of personal debt, there will come a point when we can no longer sustain these trends. Even if we were saving a meager 3 or 4%, at least we would have some fallback when life happens, such as a child gets sick, the car breaks down, a lost job, or a separated family. With today's low or no savings, there is no room to maneuver when families are faced with a financial emergency. And consequently, many are left with no other choice but to go further in debt. There have been 20 economic downturns in the U.S. over the past 100 years, some deeper and longer than others. This graph depicts several of those downturns over the past 30 or 40 years. However, the most recent one that began in 2008 has been the deepest and longest since the Great Depression of the 1920s. The only reason for this, as you saw in the previous slide, was the lack of money we had saved to help us through the downturn until things became better. Personal debt was $2.4 billion in 2009. By March of 2018, it had risen to $3.8 billion. Our savings rate was 6.1% in 2009, and now it's between 3.2% and 5.1%. Even after the hard lessons from 2008, 69% of Americans still have less than $1,000 in savings. What do you notice about the people in this picture? Like many things we do, we are influenced by internal behavior. We sometimes make irrational decisions and take an easier way, even if it may not help us in the long run. In a similar manner, many people find it difficult to save, especially if it is for many years, even though we know that in the long run, it will help us lessen any financial issues we may be faced with. In researching how people learn best, I discovered a saying which I believe to be very true. In learning how to do most things well, experience, not intelligence, plays a key role. What do we mean by that? Well, here are a couple of examples of what I mean. Take the complicated game of chess. In today's world, there are no chess masters that began the game after the age of 14. In fact, most of today's chess masters had started by the age of 10. The interesting thing they tell us is that it was not the right moves, but the mistakes they made that they remember. Another example is when we may have taught a child how to ride a bicycle. We don't buy them a book of instructions. We get them a bike, and after practicing with training wheels, they learn how to balance. The training wheels are later removed, and they experience a few falls and scrapes, but eventually learn to ride without our concern. But it takes that real experience to help them master the skill. The same thing needs to happen with money. Children need to be given the chance to make decisions and experience the consequences of their mistakes, so they won't make those same mistakes when they're adults. In other words, experience plays a big part in learning.